Is a 1 hour layover enough? Sometimes yes. Sometimes it's a guaranteed sprint, or worse, a missed flight. The better question is, what happens if I miss my connecting flight? Welcome to Travel with Buddy and Jordan. I'm your host, Jordan, and my companion, Buddy. I plan layovers based on a couple of factors: season or time of year, airport size, and if I'm catching an international flight. So let me explain to you how I plan my layovers. First, we'll start with a domestic connection to a domestic airport. Good weather, 1 hour minimum. At the smaller airports, that's usually not an issue because you don't have that far to walk to your gate. It's pretty straightforward, and in good weather, there's usually not an issue. The larger international airports, you may be cutting it close, but you probably still have sufficient time because the terminals are much longer. You may even have a satellite terminal, possibly even getting bused to a satellite terminal. So you have to take that into account, what airport you're going to be connecting at, especially international. If you got mobility issues, it may take you a lot longer. So good weather, 1 hour minimum. Winter, add 30 minutes. 90 minutes minimum, because in the winter, I plan on snow delays, maybe even ice delays. And if your departure flight has some ice and you got to de-ice, that may add some time to you arriving at your larger hub for your connecting flight. So domestic, we're done. Let's go domestic connection for your international flight. 2 hours minimum, good weather. Seems like a lot, yes. However, international flights, they start boarding 50 minutes to 1 hour before departure. And if you're even a bit delayed from your original connection getting into that domestic international airport for your international flight, if you're even delayed 20 minutes, that's cutting into your buffer quite a bit. Plus, the large, like Atlanta, JFK, LAX, the large international terminals. A lot of times you're coming in on the domestic side, the domestic terminals, and you have to go down to the international terminals. And sometimes those can be a distance all the way down the terminal. And again, you may have to get bused to the international side. So at the bigger airports, not only is greater distances to cover, but much larger terminals, and there's a possibility of satellite terminals, or is there more traffic, like spring break or summer tour season? So different factors. 2 hours minimum, good weather. Of course, add 30 minutes if it's the wintertime because of those possible snow, ice delays. Remember, the better question to ask is, what if I miss my connecting flight? You miss your international connecting flight, guess what? There may not be another international flight to your destination until the next day, because those don't operate as frequently as a domestic flight. So now you just missed going overseas. You got a logistic nightmare. You got to contact the whole hotel, let them know, oh, we missed our flight. We're not be coming in tonight. Don't cancel, but you're probably charged that first night. If you booked a tour or a trip or something, and you're not there, you may have just lost your money. So yeah, the consequences of that can be catastrophic. 2 hours minimum, good weather. Now, that's covering going overseas. Let's go overseas back to the U.S., whether you're a U.S. citizen coming back or you're international visitor coming to the U.S. 2.5 hours minimum, good weather. Because when you flying, you check in international, you're coming across, landing in Minneapolis, JFK, Atlanta, LAX. Let's take Atlanta, for example. You're coming in, you're landing on the international side, the international terminal. You get off. First thing, passport control. If you don't have global entry, those lines can be long. It could be 30 minutes, maybe even an hour. So the first choke point or delay point is passport control. Now, once you get through that, you got checked luggage. You wait for your checked luggage, grab that, go through customs, declare or not declare. Once you're through there, then you drop it off with the airline agent so they can set it on the belt and check it on your final destination aircraft. So you've gone through passport control, getting your luggage, going through customs, dropping it off. Now TSA security. You've got to go through security again, go through TSA. Those lines can be long as well. Another choke point, another delay point. Finally, you've made it through everything and you're in the international terminal. You've got to navigate around to the domestic side or the domestic terminal, and that could be a satellite terminal. So 2.5 hours minimum just because of all those potential delays to get to your connecting flight. If you're U.S. citizen and going home, it's usually not an issue. But if you're an international visitor going to Disneyland or Vegas or somewhere else, you don't want to miss those connecting flights. So 2.5 hours, good weather. Add a half hour for winter, and at 3 hours. That's your domestic, and that's international coming back to U.S. Now let's do the final one, international. Coming from a smaller international airport connecting to a large international airport for your connecting flight back to the U.S. There are differences in the international airports, unlike the U.S. 2.5 hours minimum, good weather. Because the airports are London Heathrow, Frankfurt, Charles de Gaulle, Amsterdam are massive, huge airports. Long distances to travel. I mean, long distances to travel and walk, and not a lot of trams available. So if you got mobility issues, that is going to be a challenge. You also may get bussed. 2 years ago, I was in Newcastle. I was in England. So my flight back was Newcastle, Paris, Atlanta, Louisville. So we left out of Newcastle on a smaller plane. It's like an Airbus 320, 321. A few minutes delayed on Newcastle, but not an issue. We land at Paris, Charles de Gaulle. Okay. And we're taxiing, and I see the terminal coming. And there it is, and there it goes, and we're still taxiing. The terminal just went that way. Where are we going? Finally, we stopped, parked, far end of the tarmac. I'm looking at my watch. My plane is starting to board. It's 15 minutes before departure. My plane's starting to board, and I see the buses coming up. So I'm in the first wave, get out in the first bus, and the bus takes off, and it drives, it stops, let the planes go by, and it keeps going. It goes around and under and around. De Gaulle is just a maze. Finally, we stop at the terminal. I'm looking at my watch, 20 minutes before boarding. We get out, security. You got to go through De Gaulle security. That took 10 minutes. So now I'm looking, I got 10 minutes to board. Fortunately for us, our gate wasn't that far away. We arrive at the gate, 5 minutes to spare. The last of the passengers are boarding. I have my ticket, so I already have my seat. Was an issue, not a problem. But I really cut it close, and I did not budget a long enough layover for De Gaulle because I didn't anticipate the busing issue. So those airports, it's a lot different. 2.5 hours minimum, good weather. Add a half hour if it's winter season and expect the bad weather. And those are the 4 different scenarios. So instead of telling you never book a 1 hour layover, here's how to decide yourself. You want to ask yourself 3 questions. First, what happens if I miss my connecting flight? If you're just going home, it's usually not an issue. But if you're missing your international flight to your vacation, like you already said, a logistical nightmare, now you've got big problems because you probably won't get there until the next day. So 1, what happens if I miss my connecting flight? 2, what are the realistic risks? What are the risks that you can see and try to avoid? Large international airport for international flight. You know you're going to have greater distances to cover. You may even have it to go to satellite terminals. If you're connecting to an international airport, the busing situation, you may not get to the terminal. You may have to take a bus, and that's going to add on quite a bit of time just to get to the terminal and the additional security, knowing you're going to have to go through additional security anyway and long wait times for the different layers of security. And then last, how much stress are you willing to take or cause? Me, I don't like causing any stress. Life is stressful enough. I don't want to add any more stress to my life. But are you the type that, oh, 1 hour international layover, not a problem, I've got this, and you're delayed, and now you're freaking out, you're stressing that you might miss your flight, you might miss boarding because you didn't budget a long enough layover, but it's a cheap flight. Is that an acceptable amount of stress for you? It's not for me. For me, well, remember, you cannot avoid delays, but you can decide how much buffer you want to build into your travel day. And the way I do that is when I'm looking for flying airfares, the first thing I do is I put the priority on lowest to highest airfares. So I'm looking at good, inexpensive airfare. Great. Now, once I do that, the very first thing I focus on, nothing else. What are my layover times? Every airport. What are my layover times? If I've got a tight connection, it's a cheap flight, but it's 1 hour layover in JFK. Nope, it's not enough for me. If I can't see anything in that first price range, I'm going up to the next. Then I'm looking at what am I low? Okay, that looks a little better. I've got a tight connection here, but a long connection here. I got to balance that out. Not good. Let me go up. What's the next higher fare? What's that? And I will finally get the right balance of airfare and sufficient layover time for me that I'm not going to stress. Sometimes that may mean for a round trip flight, I'm paying 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 more for those longer layovers. But I'm willing to spend that insurance money to prevent the catastrophe of missing an international flight. And now I'm being charged my hotel room for a night. I might have to cancel a tour I've already paid for in advance. That could be very, very expensive. I would much rather be at the gate waiting for my international flight, wishing we would have arrived just a little bit later so I wouldn't be waiting so long, than rushing and rushing and rushing because I didn't budget sufficient time and I miss my connecting flight to Europe, wishing, oh, if only I would have planned a longer layover. You don't want that to be you. I certainly don't want that to be me. If this is helpful, I'll continue breaking down airports, flying, international travel here on this channel. For more detailed guidance from check-in to arrival at your destination, you can check us out at our site at Travel with Buddy and Jordan. And with that, safe flying.